Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture. I'm your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsor, Sahal. The signs of the time are upon us. The dead have been disturbed, the water currents have reversed, and quakes are now standard, and the winds are now deadly. The book is fully funded on Kickstarter. It's an awesome book. It's a very interesting book. The art is fantastic, and I go recommend you check it out. Link is in the description up above, and I'm not going to bore you with the rest of my sponsors, because I do want to get to my guest, and I have with me comic creator Madeleine Holly Rosing. So welcome to the show. Hopefully I got your name right.
Pretty close. It's Madeleine.
Madeleine.
Madeleine Holly Rosing. Yeah. I know some people say Madeleine, but it is Madeleine. Yeah.
I stand corrected. Names are not my thing. I'm just going to let everybody know that if I get something wrong moving forward, feel free to correct me. I am more than happy to take the L on it. But I am very excited to have you on because you, and it has been recommended to me that you are like one of the go-to people with Kickstarter. You also have Boston Metaphysical Society Volume 2, which is currently being Kickstarted. You got, I think, about a week left on that.
That's
And
correct.
so what is the basic premise of Boston Metaphysical Society for those who are hearing about it for the first time?
Well, the story's about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. We started with a 6-issue miniseries, which is what I call Volume 1, our original series with art by Emily Hugh. On Kickstarter right now is Volume 2, which is a compilation of our 4 sequels: the Scourge of the Mechanical Men, the Spirit of Rebellion, Ghosts and Demons, and the Book of Demons, plus a bonus 10-page story with art by Roberta Ingranata.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff going on with it.
Yeah.
And, obviously, with this, where did this idea even come from? Because you obviously take the greatest minds in pretty much the turn of the century, and they couldn't deal with this shape-shifting, I guess, demon that came from another parallel world. And now it's up to this team, and it's such a fascinating concept. And where did even this idea come from?
Well, this story was originally a TV pilot that I wrote while I was at UCLA Film School. And it was kind of interesting because it started off as sort of I was looking at like a Mulder and Scully and X-Files, but set in the late 1800s, with science that was more analog, except no aliens. I don't have aliens. And then a friend of mine at school suggested that I set it in a steampunk world. And I had heard about steampunk. I knew of it, but I did some research and completely agreed with him because it really fit with everything I was trying to do. And, and I also love kind of the science aspect. So for me, it was really fun to bring in the original series, Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini as a group called Beth, that were trying to solve the problem of the shifter, this interdimensional being that was coming into our world. And particularly since these guys don't get along, but they decided that, there was a greater evil, and so they banded together. But they're not the main focus of the story. They're integral to the original 6-issue miniseries and what happens there. But our main characters are Samuel Hunter, the ex-Pinkerton detective, Caitlin O'Sullivan, our medium and spirit photographer, and Granville T. Woods, who is their genius scientist, who, by the way, is also a historical figure himself. So he has a very interesting history with Bell and Westinghouse, the real Granville T. Woods. And in fact, he sued Edison for stealing some of his patents. I mean, surprise, surprise there. But the interesting thing is that Granville won the lawsuit, and Edison then offered him a job, but he decided to go into business with his brother and move to upstate New York. Granville himself was originally from Ohio, but since I'm the writer, I brought him to Boston because I can do that.
To even go further into that, because obviously, what is that like? Because obviously, Boston is a fascinating city,
Yes.
and it's very cool for a lot of reasons. Obviously, very important, a variety of wars, very important, and things that happen, extremely historical. I happen to have a soft spot for Boston for a different reason, but the what was that like even setting it in Boston? Because obviously it does have very much an American, I guess, entrepreneurship realm is very much what Boston is. It's also very much an inventor town type vibe as well. And it also works with steampunk very well because that's something that I think is super cool. And obviously kind of sounds like a badass name to some degree too.
Yeah. Well, for all of those reasons and more is why I set the story in Boston. Um, as you probably know, a lot of steampunk up until recently has been set in Victorian England. And I mean, the vast majority of it. And Boston Metaphysical is an American story. And I wanted it to reflect who we were as a nation. And some of it had to do with, very basic things like including women and people of color because they are part of our history. Setting it in Boston in particular, when you say Boston to an American, it almost evokes an emotional response because it has almost a mythic quality in a historical perspective. And plus, it's a very intimate city. So it was absolutely perfect for the story that I wanted to tell. Plus, New York and Chicago they've been kind of done to death. And they, like I said, they just don't have the intimacy that Boston does.
Yeah, very much so. And I don't think that this would do very well in Chicago. Also, Chicago tends to be more gang and mob related, I
Yes.
feel. And New York, I mean, anything can take place in New York, but as you said, it's been so overdone at this point that it's kind of just like another New York story. You know what I mean?
Yes.
For me, it just doesn't do it anymore. And obviously, this is up in Boston and it does evoke emotion and it evokes, America in a lot of ways. And then one of the things is obviously I don't want to go through the first volume because you could get it on this Kickstarter if you haven't read it. But one of the things that I really like what you did in this series is that you didn't have a direct sequel. You had four smaller books that are being collected in volume two.
That's
That,
correct.
and I'm going to say it the nicest way I can view it, where it's almost like a side quest. I feel is a good way to put it. And there's sort of, I don't want to say they're not canon stories; they are canon, but they're all standalones is a good way to put it.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. My idea at the time was after finishing the 6-issue miniseries was I'm never going to do a 6-issue miniseries again in my life because that like took 5 years of my life and poor Emily's as well. And at that point, I wanted to do one shots, and I think it was right before Source Point Press picked me up, and I've been talking to Travis McIntyre, we've known each other for quite a long time, and we talked about doing one shots, and I said, let me do one shots for a while and see how that goes. And so doing the Scourge of the Mechanical Man was a lot of fun because it finished off my Tesla arc that I started in the first 6 issues, which was nice to complete that. And also to put Tesla and Granville in like the same room together was a lot of fun because it's like the unlikely, buddy cop kind of story where these two have to deal with, once again, a greater threat, which was a lot of fun. Plus coming up with the twins as the antagonists. I had to bring the twins back. I've been doing a lot of these interviews, and people were like, I really love the twins and the Scourge. And I said, I think I'm going to have to bring them back at some point.
So what is that like? Because this is something that I struggle with very much so, where I like to give my audience what they want to some degree on
Mhm.
this show, and I know certain people like certain guests, but I also want some creative control. And so, how did you say, hey, people like this character or they like this concept, and how did you figure out saying, hey, I'm going to bring it back into this because people want it, but also sort of say, I want creative control, because it's tricky, because
Yeah.
I believe in the WWE method, where you should give your audience just enough, but you don't want to give them the whole cake, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I understand. I actually do get a lot of inspiration from my fans, and in the introduction for Spirit of Rebellion, um, I do talk about how uh, that was inspired by a conversation I had with a fan. Um, Not directly, but the conversation led me to think about certain things, about consequences for one's actions. And that kind of led me on a different path for Caitlin, which became really interesting for me and became interesting for the fans as well. So no, I do listen to fans. I don't take, direct feedback. And the new series I'm working on now, which probably will not be out till next year. Um, I am bringing back a fan favorite. I'm not bringing back the twins. That'll have to wait for another time. But for me, it's like, it is something to consider to bring back the twins. And if I do bring them back, it will make sense to bring them back. It won't be arbitrary. Um, but yeah, I do have a lot of fan interaction, and I do enjoy these conversations about the stories, and it does make me think, because you know people, I write the story with certain things in my head, but other people read it and they get different things, and I go like, that's really interesting. I think I like that. Let me kind of live with that for a little while and see where it takes me.
No, that's super interesting. Then you also mentioned something also interesting, where you don't want to do a 6-issue miniseries again. And this is my whole thing, is that I'm a huge Zenescope fan, and they've made a big shift where they're doing 72-page one-shots now. So
Hmm.
everything is a standalone. And while all of it does stack up onto each other, it's the idea that there's longer story, and also maybe 2 months go in between. But it's the idea that you're getting a complete story. And also, if you miss, I guess, the third one shot, you could still read the fourth one shot, and you don't need the context that took place in the third one shot. And so I feel there's been a real shift in comics lately, where people want more one shots, and that people are getting sick and tired, for a lot of reasons, of a 6-issue or a 12-issue miniseries. And especially in the Kickstarter world, because you can't simply publish, if you're an indie comic creator, every single month. I mean, very few can, because it's just your crowdfunding. And so why do you think
Unless you're Mike Shea over at Miskatonic High.
he's special? He's
He's
special.
very special. I have such respect for him. We chat occasionally on Facebook, and he's great. I love chatting with him. But yeah, I can't do what he does, because I don't. His artist is awesome that they can just keep cranking this out, but my artists need more time. And for those in the audience who have actually read the one shots of mine, you'll see that each one keeps getting a little longer and a little longer, a little longer and a little longer. Um, which is why the next series I'm planning on doing, I actually have it all outlined out. It's going to be a 4-issue miniseries, and what I do hope to do is just do 2 Kickstarters, one for issue 1 and 2, and then another Kickstarter for 3 and 4, and then obviously one to pull it all together. But yeah, so my life is mapped out for the next couple of years. I can tell you that.
Because it's so fascinating to me, because at this point, I mean, and this is what happens to me with Kickstarter books, is that when you have a 6-issue miniseries, I get into your book, for instance, at issues 1 and 2, but then when issue 3 rolls around, something else catches my eye, or I might miss it. And so now what starts happening is that I miss half the series, or so much time has gone through and by, that I don't even know what happened in issues 1 and 2. And that's my whole thing, is then that's why I'm really liking one shots right now, or I'm liking a lot of novel stuff.
Yeah, I mean, um, I like the one shots, and I personally like buying trades, because I like to have, I'm a big Saga fan, but I can tell you I'm waiting till I guess they're going to be dropping the trade pretty soon. I'm not sure. I have to go double check on that. But yeah, I'm waiting for the trade because I want the whole thing at once. Um, but in order for me to tell the story I wanted to tell, it became apparent that I needed more room to breathe. I needed more time. And by doing a 4-issue series, I think that's manageable. And particularly if I organize it Kickstarter wise for 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4, people will be like, okay, this is fine. I can deal with this. And everyone knows I always finish what I start, so they know it's coming.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to talk about your new series in a second here, but I do want to stay on Boston Metaphysical Society for a second as well, where obviously this Kickstarter also has the Ghosts and Demons, as well as
Mhm.
the Book of Demons in it, which are 2 more stories, and then it also has that additional 10 pages. And
Correct.
so one of the things that I think is very important that I feel when people put out a trade is they don't create bonus content in their trade paperback, because I feel like you need to give a reason. If somebody has all 4 1 shots as floppies, why would they go and buy the trade? And that's what the bonus, I
That's what the
feel.
bonus is, and also having a unique cover. I was fortunate to get Marguerite Savage on board to do the cover for the for Volume 2, and and it looks fabulous. But yeah, you have to give them a reason, and the 10 pager is exclusive to this trade. It won't be anywhere else. Uh, but yeah, I know there's some people who will buy the 1 shots, but they'll also buy the trade just because they like the cover, or they just like to do it. They like the series and things like that.
And then even going further into this, because at this stage, Boston Metaphysical Society is now not just a comic; it's a novel. There's a prequel novel. There's an
Yeah,
audio drama. I think there's going to eventually be a sequel to that audio drama. I've known you for less than 20 minutes, and I have a pretty good idea what's coming down the pike here. I think there's a coloring book, and
yeah.
I'm missing some other stuff with this, clearly. But what is this like? Because I don't think you intended at all for it to evolve in this fashion. And now it's become very much a brand and very much an entity and very much, I don't know what you exactly call it, but it's exceeded one medium is a good way to put it.
Hmm. Um, Actually, I'll have to correct you there. It's not something I talk about very often, but in fact, this is exactly what I've planned. I've always envisioned Boston Metaphysical as a transmedia property, and that means going out into other mediums. It just takes time, and and I have to give a big shout out to Eddie Louise and Chip Michael, who are my production crew for the audio drama. Um, it's something I had thought about and considered before I had met Eddie Louise, but it was Eddie Louise who really kicked me in the butt and said, "You have to do this." And I said, "But only if I can have you and Chip on board." And the reason for that is they're the co-creators and producers of Sage and Savant, which was an audio drama that was on for 4 years. It's a steampunk time travel, totally fun. If you haven't heard it, it's terrific. Um, and they're just amazing. We had an amazing actors on board, but it's also a tremendous amount of work. And granted, next time won't be quite as time intensive because you know I've, I've been through it once, and a lot of things are already set now. But no, I've always envisioned this building out into other things.
So to even go further into that, because I think a lot of people envision their projects, whether it's to be on television
Hmm.
or to be in a novel or novelization. And obviously, going to comic book to novelization or novelization to comic book is probably easier than going into an audio drama, I would imagine,
Yes.
because writing a novel, all you need is electricity, a laptop, word processor, and maybe the internet, and you're pretty good for a while. 90% of it's covered. Um,
Yes.
but what is this like for you? Because very few people, I think, achieved what you have achieved. in indie comics at this point. And you are, I can't think of somebody else, but I'm sure there is somebody else who has done what you have done. And what is that like? Because it's a massively exclusive club.
Well, Girl Genius has done a lot. They're on, well, I'm not even on the same page as Girl Genius. Let me put it that way. They're amazing. Phil and Kaya Folio, and what they've accomplished over the years. They've also been doing this a lot longer than I have. Um, and but wow, they have novels. I don't think they have an audio drama. I don't. I could be wrong, but they have games and video games, and that I haven't done yet. So they're pretty awesome. Lady Mechanica, who I'm going to be writing a story for when I finish this Kickstarter, I'm going to start writing that. Joe and Marcia over there, they're fabulous people. I know Marcia was very much intrigued about doing an audio drama, featuring Lady Mechanica. I don't know if they're going to do it or not, because it's just so much work that I don't know if they want to dive into that or not. But yeah, it's the Girl Genius, and there's probably some others out there that have done other stuff, particularly games.
Yeah, no, because I am very ignorant on the entire audio drama realm and even knowing who has done something and massively cross media, because the only cross media that I find that people really talk about is comics going to television. And I think that's a very narrow viewpoint of what a comic can be. A comic can be a game, it can be a card game, it can be a variety of other things. It could be an NFT
Yeah.
for all people know. And I think a lot of people don't think about it that way. And I think it's super interesting what you've done. And then even going further into it, it also gives you a lot of leverage as far as your audience, because if somebody comes in on the comic realm, they might be intrigued then to read the novel. And
Yeah.
then they might be intrigued to read, or not read, because you can't read an audio drama, but you're going to listen. You're going to listen to the audio drama.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what is that like? Because now you're really leveraging your audience in a lot of ways, and you're also giving a lot of entry points into a property, which I think
Correct.
is something that is super important right now, because everybody comes into certain things in a different way. And so that's sort of cool, I think, as well, where you figured out how to really leverage your audience effectively.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the process of this. I mean, this is my business. This is what I do full time now. So yeah, I have to think about these things in order to keep moving forward and producing and paying my artists and my letterer and my pre-press guy and all the folks that help make this happen. So yeah, I do have to think about the broader view of it. But there's also no rush, and I'm glad I didn't try to rush into doing the audio drama any earlier than what I did, because then I wouldn't have known Eddie and Chip. So it was good to wait until the right moment. Same thing if originally the idea behind this was to turn the TV pilot into the graphic novel and then sell it back to Hollywood. But a funny thing happened during all this, and I decided I really love writing comics, and I love the indie comic creator community. This is just a terrific community that I so enjoy being a part of. So I stayed. And so here we are, 10 issues later, and an audio drama and a novel, an anthology and a coloring book, and there is more to come. So yeah, it's been an interesting road.
And so obviously, since we're talking about TV slightly, one of the things that I have gotten into several disagreements with people, not contentious ones, but
Yeah.
people have been talking about Netflix lately and even just streaming. And the way I feel about it is that people say, oh, those companies are going to need to produce cheap content. And I'm going to the point with comics where I think they're going to have to dig deeper into comics. And I think it's actually the golden age for all these streaming companies, because they need must-see TV. And, I feel that it's a creator's golden age, because the answer isn't to produce something cheap anymore. It's that you need to create that. And so how do you feel about, really, because you started off writing it as a TV pilot, and then the graphic novel is going to come out of it. And I think, that's sort of the future, in my opinion, of Hollywood. In reality, is that they're going to be pulling out of the indie comic world. And I'm very curious how you feel about that. Because feel free to disagree. I could be completely wrong.
I actually agree. The powers that be in Hollywood and beyond are pulling from the independent creator community. Absolutely. Interesting enough, they're also pulling from the audio drama. They're looking deep into that. To my knowledge, you see more and more, network cable developing their own audio dramas almost as a testing field to see how audience responds, because it's much cheaper than doing a regular TV pilot, or even an animated one, to see if they've got an audience for it. And if they do, then it's worth spending the money to either move it to live action or to animation. And yes, animation is going to be cheaper than live, but it's not cheap.
No, it is not cheap. And
it is not cheap, and you still need good stories. I mean, we've been watching more and more and more animated series, both anime and animation. And I think I just finished last night the second season of Pacific Rim: The Black, and that was really good. And then there's Vox Machina, which is that's just, don't have children in the room if you're going to watch this. This is not child friendly at all. It is not appropriate for children, but it is funny as all get out. Castlevania was great. No, there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah, because I mean, the way I'm seeing it is that, nothing against DC or Marvel, and I don't think those companies are done by any stretch of the imagination.
No, never.
I think the idea of what's going on is, I just think they've gotten lazy, and that's really what I think. And I think that they haven't felt the pain yet of their laziness, and when they do, there will be a shift in the way they produce things and the stories they tell. But it's a matter of when, not if, I feel. And the indie world, at least people are experimenting and trying new ideas, and they're trying new concepts, and they're not scared to cross lines and in issue 3 kill off a main character, which is kind of nice to some degree. And so obviously I think that's been taking note and been taking a lot of attention. So I just find it very interesting, because I look at everything and I think like an investor more than anything else. And so that's how I'm viewing it, and trying to figure out where all of creation and Hollywood and even people are going, and what they're creating for, and where do these creations wind up going to. And I just found that topic to be fascinating. But again, I'm not a writer. I haven't produced a comic yet. And so I'm always fascinated in figuring out where somebody's perspective is on that.
It's like your brownies are done or something. I heard this ping.
That's my phone, because my friends are bothering me, knowing I have interviews, and they're like, "Oh, let's go bother Andrew today." That's what happens in my world, everybody.
Well, they should get on the show and put in comments.
No, see, they're not that good at friends.
Okay.
They're like level 3 friends. They're not level 4 friends.
Okay.
So it's unfortunate, There's a ranking system, guys. I'm just saying.
Okay.
But I actually do want to dive into rewards before we talk about your new series, and even talk about Kickstarter, because you're the go-to person apparently by one named Sam Quinnen explained that you are the go-to person for Kickstarter, and that you cheated him out of writing a book. He was going to write a book, and then he read your book, and he's like, "I can't beat this."
Sam is great. Yes, I did write a book called Kickstarter for the Independent Creator. I wrote it. It was pre-pandemic. The second edition is out, and I think I did update it in 2020. I haven't updated it since then because I haven't had time. But what it is essentially a field guide to running a Kickstarter campaign. It does focus on comics, but the strategies are good for any creative endeavor. I actually used to teach classes and stuff like that. I don't have really time to do that anymore. But yeah, it's a very handy resource. I tell people when they get it, to read it through once and then read it again and make notes that are particular for your campaign, because everyone starts at a different point. I do have an interesting story from WonderCon many years ago. A gentleman came and bought the book from me on a Friday night, and then he came back Saturday, and he came to my table. He says, "I read your book." I said, "Great." He goes, "I'm never going to run a Kickstarter campaign." And I looked at him and I said, "That was the best $10 you ever spent, because now you know what is required to run a successful campaign. And if you're not willing to do that, which by the way is okay, running a crowdfunding campaign is not for everybody, but he's had the information in his hands of, everything he needed to do. And now that he had that information, he could decide, okay, I don't want to do that, so let me self-fund in another way, or look for investors, or just save money, do whatever you want to do. But
That's so
it is,
interesting.
yeah, it is a second full-time job most of the time. And you do have to, pre-prepare for all of this. So yeah, and it takes a lot out of you. It's, you're putting your heart and soul out there in the world for people to judge, and not everyone is going to like it. And so you have to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own thoughts on Kickstarter, where there's a lot of people who also don't exactly have never run a business before.
Yeah.
And running a Kickstarter is running a business. Now, it might not be, your full-time business, but you need to have your money in a row. And a lot of people, and this is not a knock, I find that in America and in the world, a lot of people are not financially educated. And
Yeah, no, that's true.
it's a real problem, and it's something that we should be teaching in schools. But
No,
it's
I agree.
neither here nor there. But the idea is that I see it all the time on Kickstarter, where somebody's like, "Oh, I funded $8,000, but your book cost you $6 grand. Your printing was $3 grand. You're 1,000 in the hole, and that's a bigger problem. And now you don't know how to fund your next book because you don't know where you're going to get your next $1,000 to just get to the art of issue 2, and it becomes a whole budgeting fiasco." And
Yeah.
so I look at this and I also say, "Hey, look, are you selling the farm to pursue something that you want to do and that you love doing?" And it's a whole balancing act. And I think that a lot of people don't think about this, and it's very complicated. And I'm thinking about all this too. And there's a reason why I haven't done a comic yet, because I'm even saying, what am I going to be risking to do this comic? And I have to get my priorities straight. And no, nothing against, do I chase the glory, or do I keep my working regular life that's making me relatively happy? And there's other ways that I can make a lot of money in the
Yeah,
world.
well, there's other ways of doing this too. I mean, you can say like, okay, here's my printing costs. I'm, going to do a short run or whatever you're going to do. And so you know what your printing costs are, what your Kickstarter, that's 10% off the top. So you add another 10%. And then, and whatever incentives. But if okay, if you feel that's too high of a goal for you to reach, then in the meantime, go and save that money. That's the difference. So if your actual funding goal is, $3,000 or something, that's just an arbitrary number. But your actual cost is going to be 6,000, but you're not confident in getting to the 6,000. Well, spend some time and put that money away. And then you might be surprised. You might make the 6,000. You might make a little over, so you don't have to use that extra 3 that you've tucked away for this. So there's a lot of ways you can do this. And I know people who've done that they've like, okay, I know I've got I'm going to ask for this amount on Kickstarter, but I've tucked away this amount to fill in the blanks, and that's great. And then hopefully when I go out to cons, as they start opening, I can earn that money back over time. But then you get, you haven't accomplished, you can say, one, I've funded on Kickstarter, I've had a successful Kickstarter, which does say wonderful things about you, that, you've accomplished this task. It's this very hard task. And that you've produced this comic or book or whatever you're doing, and you can bring it out to the world. And it might be that this is just a way you do it, and you just wash, repeat, and it may take a few years.
I got lucky on mine. I got no problem admitting that. I got lucky on my Kickstarter. I funded and I got lucky. That's all I'm gonna say is I got lucky.
Well, that's wonderful.
But I wasn't asking for a huge amount of money. I got lucky as fuck. I got lucky as fuck. No questions about it. I will openly admit that it was pure luck. I was in the right place at the right time to get funded. And so maybe I just said I'll be on this show, and then I got funded because I was on a certain show and it was helpful. But I digress right there. I believe luck is a skill. Is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. What is the saying that luck is when skill meets opportunity?
It's something like that. That
something
might
like
be the whole thing.
Something like that. Yeah.
Or somebody said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. That's another one that I really appreciate. Meaning that the harder I work and the more effort I put into something, the luckier I get. Implying that if you put work into something and like you do 90 interview shows, the likelihood of you getting funded is probably going to be higher than somebody who does one.
Correct.
Is all I'm going to say on that.
Correct.
Actually.
Correct.
Super interesting, and I'm glad you took a book away from Sam. I'm glad for that. He has important things to do, like writing 47 Furious Tales.
That's right. That's right.
He doesn't need to bother himself teaching me how to run a Kickstarter. That's all I'm going to say on Sam.
Yeah, Sam's great. Sam's great.
I don't want to be taken out by Sam anytime soon. But I actually think that a lot of people should read your book, all jokes aside, because it's one of those things that because it'll either encourage you to do a Kickstarter, you'll have the information to do it, or it will say, look, this is what a successful Kickstarter entails. And that is just as valuable in a lot of ways, I feel, is that saying, oh my God, this is how a successful Kickstarter runs, and this is what I need to expect. Maybe I don't want that. And maybe I don't want to torture myself, and maybe this isn't for me. I'm a big believer in comic book investing, and I am very upfront when I talk about this. And I'm like, look, this might not be for everybody to be in that sector, because it does require certain skills. It requires patience. It requires understanding, and it requires a lot of research to do it effectively and do it correctly. And you will take bumps and you will take losses in the short term for the long term. And you also have to have nerves of steel sometimes. And that is not for everybody. And it's all right. There's no shame in saying, look, Kickstarter is not for me. There's no shame in saying, I will just self-fund this myself, and then I will follow just a more traditional path of distribution and selling it. So I think it's very—
Oh, absolutely. They're all valid. They're absolutely all valid, and I know people who do that as well, and they're doing very well. So yeah, it just whatever works for you. I've just been fortunate that this platform works for me. So so here I am.
It's also a science. Kickstarter in many ways is a science, and it's also a formula to some degree. And there's different modifications, from my understanding, where everybody has sort of a different play on it. Comics Tribe has their way they do things. Other people have their way. I think you have a particular way that does it, but it is very formula. It is very science oriented, and so it's very interesting. And I know what I'm buying in the next week or so. I'm definitely going to be buying your book because I need to read that. I do. I think it'll be helpful in the long run.
Remember to get the one with the green cover. That's the second edition. The green cover, second edition.
Green cover, second edition, everybody. There you go. So if you're hearing this and you want to run a Kickstarter, you want the green edition. You don't want the other edition. I don't know what other color it is. We're not going to even mention the other color because I don't want to confuse anybody. Green edition, second edition. Hopefully, if you're ordering it off of Amazon, or I'm sure you have a website, it will say second edition, hopefully.
It does. It does. Yeah.
So I just want to make that crystal clear because I don't want to steer my audience into getting the first edition. And first editions are fun, but in this case, the real value of this book is actually in the knowledge and not the print run of it.
Yes.
So I'm just going to say right there, and then I do want to talk about your new series because I actually don't know anything about your new series.
Well, the new series, when I talk about the new series, it's still in the Boston Metaphysical universe. It's just yeah, it's still in the Boston Metaphysical universe. I haven't talked a lot about it, just because it's kind of an offshoot of the end of the Book of Demons. It pretty much tells people where they're going to go next, and they're leaving Boston. I can say, Tesla is back. They're going to be going to Colorado Springs, so we're going to be looking at the United States from a different viewpoint in Colorado, and being introduced to some interesting new characters, and delving into more of the alternate history that I've developed, and more about the great houses that dominate the political structure of what I call the great states of America.
Yeah, see, this is what I like about your entire universe. I feel that you're not milking this series, but you're giving sequels that don't touch the core story, but then create, offshoots and then also enhance that main core series. And I feel like too many people, they're like, oh man, I got a great book. And I was going to stop after 6, but then they want to do a 7, they want to do an 8, they want to do a 9 because they're making money or they're doing really well on Kickstarter. And I have a lot of friends, nothing against a bunch of my friends, but I'm like, you expanded what was supposed to be a limited mini series from 6 issues now to becoming an ongoing. And I'm like, there has to get to a point where it becomes disingenuous. And I feel like you've done the opposite. You said, look, here's where the 6-issue series ends. Then we have these one-shots. And now we have an offshoot of one of the one-shots that's also only going to be 4 issues. But then there's something's going to offshoot of that. But I don't feel like it's becoming disingenuous, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it will just, you'll learn more and more and more and more about the world. I think I've actually announced it. The name of the series is Boston Metaphysical Society. It's Murder at Pikes Peak. So they're actually going to be part of a murder mystery, or mystery at Pikes Peak. One of those. I forget. I don't have to decide now because, I'm still writing it.
Yeah, you're not launching a Kickstarter on this for a while. So
no, not for a while. Not for a while.
It could also just be like all of a sudden something comes up to you in the middle of the night. You're like, that's the best title ever.
Yeah. No, usually I slave over titles. So.
Oh man, I have a very, very different way how I come up with titles for things, but this is neither here nor there. I usually get hammered and then I just write down like 15 things and I don't look at it for a week and then I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And I don't know how I get to it, but that's usually how it works.
Hey, that's a great way of doing it.
Especially if you're out with your friends and then you're just shooting titles around. It seems like that's a good one. And then you don't even look at it, and it's just because it's like your brain relaxes. And all of a sudden, like when my brain relaxes, like I just come up with something. And like I like to also have things that sound a certain way and sort of have like a parameter and a beat to them, because this way it like rolls off the tongue.
No, like I agree. Yeah, no, I agree.
Just rolls off the tongue. Like it's just cool to say. Like it's like a punk rock band. That's how it sounds, and it just sounds like, oh man, it's like an exclusive club. That's exactly how it sounds. And
yeah.
So I'm just saying, but I digress. I'm not going to push it too hard on the new series, but it's going to be fun.
It's still, it's like I said, I do have it outlined out, so I do know where it's going. Um, it's it's been kind of interesting writing it, but I'm gonna have to set that aside and focus on Lady Mechanica, which I'm looking so forward to doing that. I have so much fun playing in other people's sandboxes, uh, because then it's like I can write the story and I just hand it over and it's like, here, you deal with production, um, which is always a lot of fun. That's why I like to do anthologies because I can exercise different muscles. I like to do comedies, more comedic type shorts for anthologies because it's fun to do.
It also must be nice because you're not right now. I'm going to use an analogy on Boston Metaphysical Society. You're the quarterback. You're the GM. You're the
Yes,
one who's completely in charge, and the buck stops with you. And
correct.
that's a lot of pressure. When you work on somebody else's anthology, you have to hand in your story, and you're in charge of your story. Maybe you're in charge working with the artist a little bit if there's a little bit of dispute or they have a question. But
Hmm.
beyond that, you're not worrying about, is it this going to start the book off? Is it going to go in the middle? Does it make sense? You don't have to worry about that. You're not the one who's quarterbacking the Kickstarter either. They're the whoever organized the anthology or the team that did it is there. And so you sort of say, hey, here's my story, here's the art. It's up to you on how you want to utilize it or you don't want to utilize it for whatever means. And so it must be nice to say, oh, that's what a finished product looks like, me not publishing it.
Yeah, it's great, and yeah, obviously I take I submit a script before we go to art, and I take notes, and if they need editing, I'm totally fine, happy to take notes and editing. Um, and then we go for there, and then if they're ready to launch, it's like hey, sure, I'll happy to retweet and post and do Kickstarter updates with it and help promote it, no problem. Um, that's easy.
Oh yeah, no, no, I would imagine, which that must be nice though, just to be like, oh, it's not my problem anymore. Like,
Yeah.
but I digress right there because I actually do want to dive into the rewards a little bit because I think that's what people want to know about. And so obviously you can get anything really digital with Boston
Correct.
Metaphysical Society. So if you want volume one, you want volume two, if you want both, volumes digital, and in particular if you don't want to pay for shipping or you don't have a place to store it, or you live in a country like Australia or the UK, or Canada, shipping is expensive. And
Yeah.
COVID also has made things tricky. And I don't know the full extent of what countries are open and what countries aren't, and all their regulations still. But obviously,
Well, I do. um, yeah, I know. I actually use pirateship.com, and they have a what's called a simple export rate, which you do have to ask for once you sign up. And though USPS is having, I'm not sure they're doing Australia or not anymore. I know there was problems there, but I got all my stuff to Australia. That was not a problem because they don't go through USPS. They have a different system, and it's worked out very well. The only thing with the EU backers is VAT has gone up, and I fortunately with the simple export rate, I've reduced shipping costs. I'm able to do that quite a bit depending on how heavy the package is. Between the difference between pirate ship and USPS, but they still have to pay VAT, and there's nothing I can do about that. I mean, I do talk about it on the website. I say like, you guys are going to have to, be aware you're going to have to pay VAT. Um, and I can't do anything about that. So, I mean, there's people in it, they understand. Um, Sometimes they get a bit of a sticker shock when it arrives because they increased VAT, I think, last year to all EU nations, and yeah, that was pretty harsh.
but it's out of your control. And this is something
Yeah,
that I think that people have to
yeah.
understand is that, like, I have not backed a project overseas because I don't want to pay high shipping. I had a friend, he has a book in Canada, and it was like the book and the shipping were almost the exact same price. which was crazy. And I loved the book and I was thrilled with the book and I'm happy about it. But I'm like, even with the dollar being stronger, it was rough. And I'm like, I can't back your project physically, man. Like, and like I said to him, I said, look, I'll back your next 4 projects because he does like 3 a year or
Hmm.
4 a year. And I'm like, well, can you just ship them all to me at once? And I'll wait because it'll save me legitly $75.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like that's the whole problem I have is that it adds up really, really quickly, especially when you love a project. And so obviously I think that's something that is, you
Yeah, I mean, the projects that I back that are not in the U.S., they're all digital. Yeah, not only one the cost, but I've just run out of space. So the digital is just easier.
yeah, I love digital. I also love the fact, I mean, I don't know how you feel about comicsology, but I love comicsology. And the reason why is that I feel there's so much less pressure when I'm not buying a book for me to read it. And so when somebody gives me a cheaper digital option to buy a book for $5 digitally, the
Hmm.
pressure, if I don't like it, dramatically decreases. And it
Yeah,
allows me to relax much easier. First thing, if I'm paying 15 to 20 bucks for a book, I'm like, I have to like it, and whether that's right or wrong, or it's a psychological issue, but I think I'm not the only one who feels that. And so when I'm like, hey, it's $5 for a digital copy, I'm willing to try it too. And then if I do like it, I'll figure out a way how to get the book in a physical copy.
yeah, yeah. No, it's always unfortunate. Like I've gotten, Christmas presents of books I've actually wanted, and then I start reading them, and I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm done. Uh, but then I donate them to my library and make them all happy. So
I should do that. I should totally do that. That's actually a
I
really good
I
idea.
do I do that a lot. Let's see, my local library, they stopped taking donations during COVID. But I know Burbank opened up, and what did they say? They have a limit. You can only bring 2 boxes of books at once. Um, and they can't be like manhandled or written or scribbled on or anything like that. But I'm, you know, happy to get them in there for the other people who might enjoy them, or books that I just I enjoyed but no longer want to keep.
Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating, and that's what I should do with books I don't want anymore. That's actually a really great idea.
Yeah,
Um,
because a lot of your libraries have gift stores, and so they can go in there and then they sell them, and the money goes to the local library. So yeah, I try to do that as much as I can.
Yeah, no, it's very important. And then obviously going even further off of digital, if you want a physical copy of volume one, you can get that.
Yeah.
Obviously the physical copy of volume two. If you want both physical copies, you can get that as well. I think there's a pin set. And then there's like another special pin for this Kickstarter. So there's that. I don't know what other physical things there are in this
Oh, we
Kickstarter.
have the CD for the audio drama.
The coloring book as well, I
The
know.
coloring book, yeah. Actually, the coloring book, there's the tier called New to Boston. If you're brand new, that I think that's $50. That gets you the 2 trades plus the coloring book, and it includes shipping. So that's actually a really good deal.
And then I know there's the prequel prose novel, and
Yeah,
then there's or the anthology, I think it is,
yeah, we have
also
both.
known,
Yeah,
and
there's
then
story
there's the regular.
secrets. Yeah. So if if you're a big book fanatic, yeah, that's the prequel novel, Storm of Secrets. And that's, yeah, Prelude, that's the anthology, which is a series of short stories and novellas.
And this is the nice audio drama, or at least
Yes.
one of them.
Yes.
If you like to color, this is right up everybody's alley.
Yeah.
And then this is a cover right
That's
here.
the cover of volume 1. And that's the cover of volume 2.
And so and then obviously there's pretty much, I think, the everything kit, that if somebody wants everything, they can get it. And so obviously, and then if there's something they do want from Boston Metaphysical Society and it's not on this Kickstarter, I'm sure if they reach out to you, if you can make it happen, you probably would make it happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
I don't know what's not on your Kickstarter though. That's the problem. Like legitimately everything's on your Kickstarter.
yeah, pretty much, pretty close. There's some combinations that aren't, and then yeah, people have reached out to me and we've talked about it, and some will do it separately, and some they'll be able to add on, with backer kit when I eventually send out surveys.
And then there's also the thing where somebody might say, hey, look, you know what it is? I want 2 copies of the book. And obviously all that is handled through backer kit, or it could be
Yeah.
adjusted and it can be handled. And then the other thing that I like what you do, and I think this way because I'm very much interested in protecting comic shops and I'm interested in protecting eBay stores, and I run a comic book eBay shop essentially where you have, retail packages. And I think it's very, very important that actually a lot of Kickstarters do that and they start to understand that the comic shop that you're selling to needs to make money and
Mhm.
that you as the Kickstarter need to make money as well. And also the idea that you're getting into a comic shop. Because
Yeah.
when you get into a comic shop, it's not just you making a sale to a comic shop, it's also advertising to that audience because not everybody who buys from, a comic shop goes on Kickstarter. And there's a bunch of people who will not go on Kickstarter for whatever reason. They don't trust the platform, they might have been burned, but you want to expose them to your book and maybe they can't get to a con that you're at.
Yeah, there's people who don't do Kickstarter, totally fine. They really enjoy just going to their local comic book store, which is awesome. I think everyone should go to their local comic book store. We love them.
Especially this Saturday. Especially this Saturday.
Especially this Saturday, yes, especially this Saturday. Got to keep those comic book stores open. And then there's folks who like to go to cons. I have met people who they specifically told me that they don't back the Kickstarter because for them it's part of the fun to go find me at a convention and get it there. I mean, that's just their thing. That's what they like to do because it's fun for them. And I said, well, it's fun for me to come for you to come find me. So that's great.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's very interesting, and I think that people really need to understand how to protect everybody in the process, and so it's something that is super interesting in that realm. Um, and obviously, as I was stating, there's something for everybody on this campaign.
Yeah,
is all I'm gonna say. If you like
yeah,
that.
and we've made 6 stretch goals, and we're getting close to our last one, our 7th one. We're about $500 from our last stretch goal, and so far, all backers, everyone who has pledged to a reward, will get an additional 18 digital comics. For those who have backed a physical reward, they will not only get those 18 digital comics, but they have the 4 magnets. And something new I did this time was these really cool bookmarks. They're metal bookmarks with a copper finish, and Alejandro Lee did the design. And yeah, I think they're gonna look fabulous. We're very excited about those.
Yeah, and then the thing that I didn't mention that is actually very helpful for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people should take you up on it, is that you offer actually a Kickstarter consulting package.
Correct.
And I'm sure you know how much people charge to build out people's campaigns, and you are significantly cheaper than what a bunch of these marketing companies charge to do it.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna be very honest, a lot of these marketing companies, and I might get flack for it, I'll take the heat on it. This is all on me. They are really not giving you anything of value, where they're going to give you a little bit of value, but they're not going to help you. And I think you, on the other hand, going through 11 of these, having written the book, you're going to provide real guidance. And it's $500, and it might seem like a lot, but you're hopefully only need to go through the consultation once,
Yeah.
especially if you're brand new to Kickstarter. I will make a recommendation though, and I hope you don't mind.
Mm.
Read her book first.
Yeah.
build out your campaign, then get the consultation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would recommend that as well, because for some people, they're going to read the book and they're going to like, I'm good, I got it. And that's great, because my whole thing is to give you the tools for you to go off on your own. I don't want you to have to come back to me. Um, I I don't like codependency. So I like to teach people. I have to give you the tools to be successful. And then you take those tools and go be successful. I am successful when you're not only when you're successful, but when you don't need me anymore. That's the best part. It's like you've learned, you know what you're doing, go forth.
Yeah, I feel the same way, where I'm teaching a class on how to invest in comic books. And the idea is that I want to teach that class. And the reason why me teaching the class to mass is cheaper is because I only have to teach it once. The only
Mhm.
reason why, if I'm to teach you privately, it's expensive, it's because I'm teaching one on one and I'm not teaching to many. And so if somebody wants a one on one coaching, I'm more than happy to give anybody what they want. But it's the idea that I also want people to get the basics and never ever have to bother me again.
Correct.
Except if they want to see me at a con and buy me a beer. I mean, that's perfectly acceptable. You
Or
know?
or just stop by and say hi. I mean, I tell that to all my Kickstarter backers. I tell them where I'm going to be. And I say, like, hey, if you're at WonderCon or whatever, stop by the table, say hi. I'd love to meet you. And they do. And that's absolutely great. I love to meet backers.
And one of the things and the reason why I bring this up is that, this, especially if you're brand new, if you're uncertain, there's a lot of people who give good advice, but you are one of the go-to people. I've seen this tier offered on a lot of people's campaigns. And one of the things that I understand is that um, I don't think most people have the experience that you have in this sector. And so if you're going to go to somebody, it might cost a little bit more in the short term, but it will save you thousands, if not tens of thousands in the long run. And that's something that you have to really consider. And I'm going to encourage people that if you're listening to this, you might want to look into taking up that tier because it will be very helpful to you. And so that's something that I think people really need to know. And you also need to vet who's going to be teaching you what. Because there's a lot of people who say they can do X in comics when they really can't. And nothing against the indie comic community, but whenever there's an area where people can make money, there's always shady people involved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're always going to find someone. But yeah, there's also some good people out there as well who are also teaching and have good courses.
Guys, I'm telling you right now, she's being very civil, very civil. She's the best. Let's not pretend around here. She's really good at Kickstarter stuff. So I'm just saying that you could go to the best, or you could go to not the best. And well, clearly, I'm trying to sell you a $500 tier. Clearly, like
Thank you. Thank you. That's very nice of you.
I'm getting no kickback. I'm getting no kickback. It's all good. I digress right there, though. Obviously, though, I'm looking forward to reading this book because I think this book, and I wish I had more time during my campaign before I launched mine to read your book because I think my campaign would have done another $200 to $300 if I
Mhm.
actually read your book. And I think what your book is going to outline is going to be very helpful. So again, read the book, buy the book, read the book. If you want to be doing Kickstarters, or even if you have done a Kickstarter and you didn't get the result you wanted, that's something that is also very important as well, where a consultation for your next Kickstarter can be very helpful as well. And so
Mhm.
that's something that I'm going to encourage. But I digress right there. I think I touched upon all the rewards. Um, and I do want to back out of the reward stuff because I am curious about where you see cons going because that's something that I don't necessarily know where they're going in this sector because I've seen people create bigger digital footprints. Obviously, I've seen shows like this starting popping up a lot more. I started doing my show in March of 2020. I have legitimately seen almost 75 people who do comics are doing similar shows like this in that time period. I've also seen a bunch of them not continue, and then I'm seeing a bunch now continue with a lot of other writers. And so I'm very curious how you feel about cons, also the great digitalization pivot, and selling online, and really where selling comics lies.
Well, I'm a big fan of cons, and I think they're coming back. I did 6 cons at the end of last year. Uh, I'd say all of them were profitable. Um, I think, as people become more and more comfortable coming back, I think cons will come back. But, it just may take a little while. It'd probably take another full year before a lot of people are comfortable. I mean, I am. I'm totally comfortable at a con, but others aren't. And so, I think, I don't think their cons are dead and buried by a long shot. I think they're definitely coming back, and people want them to come back. They miss the camaraderie. They miss hanging out. They just miss the whole energy of it. They're fun. So yeah, I don't think cons are any way, shape, or form dead. Digitalization is just another offshoot of marketing, and if anything, it's probably going to help print comics because people are going to it's going to be cheaper to get more and get exposed to more. And you like something, if you're like me with books, I usually buy the digital ones first, and if I like them, then I go buy the print copies. I think you're going to see a lot of that. But everybody has different buying habits, and all of them are valid.
Yeah, no, I'm very torn on it. Where it's I like cons, but I've also con into digitalization pivot 2.0,
Hmm.
and I actually became profitable as a podcast during COVID, and I still am because I started shifting to digital, and so like I don't know what happens when I return to cons, and I find it to be fascinating in that realm, but I'm still very torn on that, but that's neither here nor there. That's my next show in an hour. We're gonna be talking about that on my comic book hangout, guys. You could all join me and a bunch of my friends with the red apple ale in my hand, in an hour. But I definitely want to give you a chance because we've been talking for an hour, and I want to give you a chance to self promote yourself. Where can people find you? Where can people hit you up? Where can people support the Kickstarter? Obviously, and also where can people support your other work? Because Kickstarter is great, but what happens after the Kickstarter and they want to come back a project that you're a part of?
Sure. Well, obviously, right now I'm Kickstarter Volume 2. You can also get Volume 1. Just look up Boston Metaphysical Society. My website is bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com. Uh, there's a web store that you can click through that. Um, Facebook is Boston Metaphysical Society Comic. Twitter is M Holly Rosing, and Instagram is MC Holly and the numeral 1. After this is over, at some point I'll be setting up a backer kit store, but probably not till around August, where if you miss the Kickstarter or just don't have the funds right now, you'll be able to pre-order books. In addition, if you can't wait or you want some of the one shots, there's also SourcePoint Press. SourcePoint Press has everything except this book right now. They have all the one shots. They have Volume 1 and the 4 sequels. The novels are and the anthology available through Amazon and all e-platforms. The audio drama right now is only available through me through CD form. For those of you who are audiophiles, I know it seems kind of retro, but you do get better sound on the WAV files, and you can always rip it into your MP3 player or something and listen to it there. But that you can only get right now through either my web store or go to the Kickstarter, and you can get. There's actually a really nice digital only. I think, what is it called? I have to go look. As I forget what everything's called. Yeah, it's called There's a Taste of Everything, digital only, and that'll get you a PDF of Volume 1, the novel, and a download of all 8 episodes of The Ghost Ship, the audio drama, which is each episode is about half-hour long, so it's 4 hours plus commentary. And so, yeah, we have a pretty much anything, your heart desires.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep saying it, and I'm just going to say that you have to support indie content creators. And what that means is that you have to back their Kickstarters. You have to support what they're doing outside the Kickstarter. If they're working on a different project that was not on Kickstarter, you have to support that project because all that money goes back into these projects and goes
Absolutely.
into helping to create these
Absolutely.
projects. And
Yeah,
it's very important.
it's really critical, doing well on Kickstarter because this helps us to move forward. So I can pay my artists and my letterer, and we can keep producing fun stuff.
And so obviously, and then also I'm going to say it as well, where you said that if somebody doesn't have the money, obviously you're opening up a backer kit store later on in the year. But even going further into that, one of the things that people really need to do is share things out on Twitter, share things out on Facebook, share things out on Instagram, because sharing something out on social media is free and it goes a long way, especially
Absolutely.
if you're in a rough
Absolutely.
spot. A share goes a long way. So that's something that I'm just going to throw out there. As far as I'm concerned, obviously all my social media is down below. I'm Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm Pop Anime Comics on YouTube. So I encourage everybody to share out, follow me on social media, check out what I'm doing. I like when people actually share out this interview. It means a lot to me there. And so I appreciate all that stuff. Also, you can follow me on Kickstarter. It's Pop Anime Comics. Unless I owe you money, and if that's the case, I'm gonna quietly walk away as if I broke something in a store. And so on that note, though, I'm gonna give you the final word because I don't want to keep you here all night.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And for those who are watching, please go check out the Kickstarter. And like we mentioned, if you can't back it right now, please share, post, tweet. That does an enormous help for all of us.
And I don't think I could have said it any better myself. So that's a wrap, everybody.
Thank you.